Ever look up at the night sky and wonder if it's all just a massive, random accident, or maybe a carefully engineered machine? Well, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a millennia-old global debate about exactly how a reality is ordered and whether or not a divine architect is behind the whole shebang. We're going to explore some of the most profound philosophical arguments ever constructed, looking purely at the logical frameworks thinkers across the world have used to try and explain the cosmos.
Here is my roadmap for today. First, the search for cosmic order. Second, the argument from design. Third, mind, morality, and karma. Fourth, the problem of evil. And finally, reconciling God and suffering. Let's dive in. It all kicks off with cosmology. Now, we're not just talking stars and planets here. This is the foundational study of how reality itself is ordered. Philosophers look at causation, contingency, motion, and change, basically asking one monumental question: why do things interact the way they do? And that brings us to the core question that has kept thinkers awake for literal centuries. How do we actually account for the incredible, complex order we experience every single day? For millennia, humans have pointed to a first cause or a first mover to explain this order, often equating that cause with a divine architect. Moving to Section 1, the search for cosmic order and the argument from design. Okay, so the philosopher Thomas Aquinas laid this out almost like a strict mathematical proof. He noticed that things in nature without a mind still act toward a specific goal. Think about an arrow for a second. An arrow has zero consciousness, right? So if it actually hits a target, it requires direction from an intelligent being, the archer. Aquinas concluded that all natural things are directed toward their end by an intelligent being, which we call God. Fast forward a few centuries, and William Paley gives this a major update with a really famous thought experiment. Imagine you're walking on a beach and you find a pocket watch. You open it up, you see the complex gears, the coils, the springs, and you immediately know a watchmaker designed it. It didn't just randomly assemble itself by chance. Paley argued that the biological complexity of a human eye is vastly more intricate than a watch, logically implying an even greater divine designer. But hey, it's not all biology. Some build their case entirely on objective morality. The idea is if universal standards of right and wrong genuinely exist, there must be an ultimate source for their objective validity, and that source is God. But here's where modern philosophy throws a curveball. Thinkers like Stephen Darwall challenge this entirely, asking if ethics actually require divine authority or if human morality is completely autonomous and better understood totally separate from a divine source. And then we have Anselm's ontological argument. This one is a total mind-bender. It completely ignores nature and goes straight for pure logic. Anselm starts with a definition. God is a being than which nothing greater can be conceived. He then asks us to think about a painter. What's greater? A painting that only exists in the artist's mind, or that exact same painting existing physically in reality? Clearly, existing in reality is greater. Therefore, Anselm argues if God is the greatest conceivable being, he can't just be a concept in our heads. He must exist in reality, because to exist in reality is by definition greater than to exist only as an idea. Let's shift gears to Section 2, mind, morality, and karma, Eastern perspectives. In Hindu cosmology, reality is tightly governed by karma. It's a strict causal law linking causes directly to effects. If you act in a way that causes harm, you ultimately hurt yourself. It's almost mathematical. Your actions are retained as karmic debt or reward across samsara, which is the endless cycle of rebirth. Now, to maintain a flawless, perfectly ordered system of cosmic justice like that, a lot of Hindu traditions argue that a conscious divine agent is mechanically required. You can understand karmic causality on its own, sure, but how is this massive, complex chain so well ordered to guarantee perfectly just results over multiple lifetimes? The logic dictates that only a conscious agent is capable of properly ordering all past, present, and future karmic interactions. So to administer this cosmic law, God must exist. But, this philosophical landscape is incredibly diverse. Take the ancient Mimamsa school, for example. They counter this entirely. They actually view their sacred texts, the Vedas, as eternal but completely authorless. They looked at those design arguments and deemed them logically and mathematically inconclusive, choosing to focus purely on the practical mechanics of living properly instead of searching for some grand cosmic administrator. Which brings us to Section 3, the problem of evil, the ultimate plot twist. This right here introduces a massive logical hurdle for the whole argument of design, often called the problem of suffering. If the designer of the cosmos is perfect, all-powerful, and deeply caring, well, why is there so much suffering? Does the sheer presence of evil imply that the designer is somehow flawed?
The famous skeptic David Hume broke this down into a strict logical contradiction known as the Epicurean trilemma. Think about it like this. If God knows about suffering but can't stop it, God is not all-powerful. If God can stop it but doesn't know what's happening, God is not all-knowing. And if God knows and has the power but simply doesn't want to, then God is not all good. Hume argued that these three traits clash fatally with the undeniable reality of evil.
Building right on top of that, philosopher William Rowe presents the evidential problem of evil. He's not just looking at strict logic, he's looking at sheer probability based on what we actually observe. Rowe points out that there are instances of intense, pointless suffering in the world that an all-powerful being could have easily prevented without causing any negative butterfly effects. For Rowe, this tips the scales pretty heavily against the existence of an all-good creator.
All right, final section. Reconciling God and suffering. St. Augustine used Neoplatonic logic to tackle this paradox head-on. His defense brings up a really fascinating premise. An all-good God didn't create evil, because evil isn't actually a real entity or substance. Instead, Augustine argued that evil is simply a privation. It's a lack or a negation of good. Just like darkness is literally just the absence of light, evil is just the absence of good. Therefore, the existence of evil doesn't contradict a perfect creator because God didn't introduce evil into existence at all. But, just shifting our starting point changes the entire equation. While Western thought really struggles to reconcile evil with an all-good creator who made absolutely everything, the Yoruba African perspective completely separates the two. They remove the agency of evil from the supreme creator entirely, attributing it instead to multiple spiritual beings scattered around the cosmos known as Ajogen. Suddenly, evil isn't this massive paradox about God's nature, it's a down-to-earth issue of one moral agent harming another.
Taking that even a step further, Yoruban metaphysics completely rejects Augustine's whole idea that evil is just an unreal illusion. Instead, they assert that evil is structurally and logically necessary. We actually need the ability to contrast good and evil. Otherwise, goodness itself would have no meaning. You literally cannot understand one without the mathematical contrast of the other. So we've explored some grand blueprints of reality today, from Paley's watchmaker to the strict mechanics of karma, all the way to Hume's trilemma and the Yoruban ajogen. Everyone is looking at the exact same universe, but they're drawing wildly different conclusions. So when you look around at the complex order and the intense struggles of our reality, ask yourself, is this a beautifully designed masterpiece, a strict cosmic equation, or something else entirely? Which framework makes the most logical sense to you?